Welcome, folks. I'm Steve Adubato. Normally this is one-on-one, but in this special case it's one-on-two. Introduce two very special guests. Michellene Davis is Executive Vice President and Chief Corporate Affairs Officer at RWJBarnabas Health, and Reverend Phillip Gilmore, St. John's Community Baptist Church on Bergen Street in Newark. I want to thank both of you for joining us.
Thank you.
The 50th anniversary, around when we do this program, it'll be airing after. The 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King in Memphis, right? Changed the lives of so many people in this country, changed the world. Dr. King meant so much to so many. What did he mean to you?
He meant everything to our lives. He influenced my dad greatly. My dad was a pastor in Newark for 25 years. He was also one of the first African Americans on the Newark Police Force. He joined in 1955. And my father, because of the teachings of Dr. King, instilled in us really a love for humanity and a love for ourselves as African Americans.
Before you read Dr. King's preachings, if you will, what do they mean to you?
Oh my goodness. I know that there's not one accomplishment I've ever been able to do in my life that would have been possible but for his work, right? The fact that he came before I did.
Yeah, you weren't even born.
You got it, helped to pave the way, right? There is nothing that I have that anyone who came before me did not have. I'm not that bright, right? I'm not that brilliant. There were incredibly brilliant black women who blazed trails before me, but the doors weren't open. And so he opened those doors.
Dr. King was 39 years of age in Memphis, Tennessee, for the sanitation workers there to support them.
Yes.
They were getting the shaft. They were getting treated terribly. And they just asked him. You know, a lot of people would ask Dr. King, obviously, to do all kinds of things. And he was exhausted, but he went anyway. Read to us.
This is a prayer of Dr. King's. I just think that if you're going to really look into the heart of a man or a soul of a man, that if you have the opportunity to eavesdrop in on his prayers, that it shows you a lot about him. And so this prayer says this. It says, "Our loving Father, from thy hand have come all the days of the past. To thee we look for whatever good the future holds. We are not satisfied with the world as we have found it. It is too little the kingdom of God as yet. Grant us the privilege of a part in its regeneration. We are looking for a new earth in which dwells righteousness. It is our prayer that we may be children of light, the kind of people whose coming and ministry the world is waiting."
What do you take from that? By the way, he was really young.
He was.
Early on in
Yes.
his career. What does
That's
it mean
right.
to you?
What this is saying to me is this is a prayer really to the African American population. And it is encouraging us to understand a high and noble calling that we've been given to bring to humanity a greater depth of insight and passion for each other. He says that we are not yet like the kingdom of God on earth, not yet. And that's really what his heart was. In the book of Revelation, it talks about in heaven there's going to be every nation, tribe, language, and people group. So what Dr. King really wanted was a little taste of heaven on earth. His dream is heaven's reality. And in his mind, he's just saying, why wait? Why do we have to wait till we get to heaven to get along, to be a brotherhood of love? And he looked at our struggle and our plight as a privilege to lead, because there is no power like the power that is displayed when the oppressed reaches out an olive branch of love to the oppressor. That changes the entire dynamic.
First of all, thank you, Reverend. You've helped us in so many ways. You're a part of our very challenging, difficult, but important conversation about police-minority relations, which you participated in as well. So, Michellene, what do you think Dr. King would think and feel about where we are today and where we are not in terms of social justice in for the African American community and the state of race relations?
I think, Steve, that he would think two things. One, that he knows that his sacrifice was not in vain, in that there are so many people who were still fit for the fight. And two, he would look at certain elements that are existing right now and wonder whether or not any time had passed at all. He would be concerned whenever he saw that there were large groups of individuals who were too monolithic to literally advance the cause that they sought. So he would look at marches like those that have been formed around ensuring that there is some justice and some equity in the African American community, and he'd wonder why are there so many African Americans and not so many others? He would look at other issues, and he would be glad about the fact that there, like a March for Our Lives, we saw the young and the old, we saw individuals of every demographic.
Saw some progress.
He
Not
would
nearly
be
enough.
encouraged at the fact that there were 11-year-old keynote speakers that day. But he would...
The kid's amazing. Check it out.
Incredible. But he, I believe, would still understand that his dream was a vision and that that is still a reality that we should be striving for.
You know, listen, we're doing this program as we enter May 2018. I don't want to make too much of the Starbucks incident because there's so many. By the time this airs, there will be, unfortunately, too many other things that take place, incidents that take place that just don't make any sense. But I think about, if you think about Rosa Parks and you think about those who just tried to sit at a counter in the South, right? And other parts of this country, just sit at a counter and weren't able to. When you see those two men, the cops came, those two men just did not resist, taken out, held for 8, 10 hours, I don't know how long it was, because they were sitting and waiting. I lost count of the number of, I go to Starbucks, no commercial for them, but I lost count of the number of people who happened not to be black sitting there for a long time. I've never seen cops ever called. So my point is this, with all the progress, with all the challenges, what do we make of that incident? Not about them, Starbucks, but about us. What do we make of it? What would he make of it?
What would he make of it? Well, I mean, he would point out the obvious, that racism still exists. And
Is it different than it was in 1968?
it's still based upon fear.
Fear of?
And that's the question. Why? Fear of what?
What was that manager afraid of?
It's hard for me to say. I wish I could jump into his head to try to figure out where the fear or the misunderstanding comes from or the ignorance comes from. I mean, I'm not a person who immediately jumps to the level of saying that something is prejudice, right? I'm not that person. But I do think that there is a thin line between ignorance and prejudice. And I happen to believe that I'm going to fall on the side of ignorance before I fall on the side of prejudice, because I think that when you have the opportunity to spend time around people, then they can begin to see past the color of your skin. And so...
Rather than the content of your character.
Absolutely.
As Dr. King said many times. So I'm curious about this. For those watching who say, you know, I don't know why we can't have an honest conversation about race. And I don't simply mean, not simply, but mean the persecution and the injustice that the African American community continues to face. I mean an honest conversation about race without calling someone a racist quickly before we know, as opposed to ignorance, which is pretty bad already. How hard for us to really talk about race?
So it's really interesting, Steve. What I have found is the fact that folks have been told for a long time that it is a taboo topic.
Don't talk about it.
Don't talk about that. Don't talk about religion. Don't talk about politics. And what we have found is the fact that not talking about those things perhaps has created these barriers that prevent us from being able to move forward. Not even move forward with, say, a progressive agenda. Move forward towards a relationship. Move forward, right, towards a corporate strategy. Move forward just onward together. I will tell you that what is concerning to me about the particular Starbucks incident is that it was so not alone. That what we are seeing as a result of that incident is that we are going back to the 1960s type of racism. You asked Reverend Gilmore whether or not today's is different. Well, what we're seeing is that, right, what the word told us, that there's nothing new under the sun, right? Everything old is new again. So while there was an African-American man who was saving lives in one Waffle House, there was an African-American woman who asked for utensils and had the police called on her and literally went through an experience which was both dehumanizing and completely embarrassing, where her top was ripped off and she was arrested for asking for a utensil. There are others, right? So at this stage, I look at it and said, well, I've got to be careful if I want a cup of coffee, if I want a utensil, if I want to play golf. I mean, this is what's starting to show up.
Before I let you go, hopeful? Or do you just have to be?
Well, Dr. King made this statement. He said, we must accept finite disappointment without losing infinite hope.
Hopeful.
Undoubtedly so. Because what we know is that while our past brought us Dr. King, what we know is that he invoked in us a charge that we are each to be a little bit of him in every environment where we are. That it is not enough to see the issue, to shrug our shoulders, to shake our head, and to give up. But that we have to utilize every opportunity, every venue, every platform, every cause in order to have a discussion where we come together and not push apart.
Thank you, my friends.
Thank you.
The legacy of Dr. King lives on, and we have a lot of work to do. No doubt. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Be right back.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by the Northward Center, Georgian Court University, NJM Insurance Group, the Fidelco Group, the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, Fedway Associates, and by Johnson & Johnson. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.